Hi everyone, my name is Warren and I'm with the integration support team at McGraw-Hill. Today we're going to go ahead and go over Access Manager 101. If you have questions throughout the presentation, you can use the Q&A button towards the bottom of your webinar to ask them. And my co-host who's with us today, Andrea, will get to your questions during the presentation. There's also going to be two separate times where we'll go over questions during this webinar. And at that point, I will go over some of the more common ones that people are asking so we can answer them live. You can also upvote others' questions so that we can address and figure out which ones are the most common. With that said, we will go ahead and jump into today's presentation. Here we go. So McGraw-Hill Access Manager 101. On today's agenda, we are going to do an introduction to the Access Manager system and then a quick overview of its functionality and main uses. We'll then go over how to log into the program. We'll stop briefly for questions after that point, and then we'll do a high-level overview of the different system components that are available within the Access Manager platform. Finally, at the end, we will have another question session. So, what is Access Manager? Access Manager is a McGraw-Hill tool that allows you to see a high-level overview of the data that your district is sending to us. The primary function for it, though, is for our one roster customers to have the ability to assign content to their courses, classes, or users. That is what allows teachers and students to actually see McGraw-Hill subscriptions when they log into their accounts. Other functionality in the system includes viewing when and what data is being sent to McGraw-Hill, verifying what content a user has been assigned, and troubleshooting any errors that might have occurred during the import process. So, like I mentioned, Access Manager is primarily used to assign content to your district's users. This is a required step for any of our districts that use the One Roster 1.0 format. So that includes if you send data to us via a CSV upload on a nightly basis, or if your district is linked to us via an API. For any of our One Roster 1.1 customers, this step can be completed using the course or class resource files within One Roster 1.1. That is optional. You can opt to either use those files or forego them and continue to use Access Manager to map the content at that point. All right, so now just an additional note here. No matter how your district uploads the data, again, whether that is through One Roster CSV, an API, or even if you're using the McGraw-Hill bulk import BUIP proprietary file, all of that data is processed here within Access Manager. From Access Manager, we take that data and upload it to the Connected site through an overnight sync. What impact that's going to have is that when you initially import the data to Access Manager, we will create new users and make changes to their profiles, such as their name or their email address or the schools that they're associated with. However, for any connected classes or content that they have newly been assigned through that file, it will need to wait for our nightly process to sync that data into the Connected system. If you're using any of our new open learning platform contents, the good news there is that we make both of those changes at the same time. So if a user needs to get access to an open learning class and you have just done an import that includes both new user data and those classes, both of those things will be available within just a few minutes after the upload. We don't need to do the Connected sync because that is only for Connected contents. One final note about that Connected sync. If you have a situation where you need to immediately make those changes propagate onto user accounts, go ahead and give us a call here in integration support or shoot us an email. We can force that content sync through early for you so that it does not need to wait for the overnight process. So now that we kind of know what Access Manager is all about, we need to know how to get into the platform. So we have two distinct ways to access it. The first is by going directly to our Access Manager website, and that is access.mheducation.com. Once you have gone there, you'll be prompted for a username and a password, and you'll be brought into the Access Manager site. The only way to get that username and password is to contact us here at integration, at least to be set up with it initially. We can manually create these accounts. However, by far the more common way to get into it is to just access the Access Manager tab through your ConnectEd admin tools. As long as you have a district administrator account within ConnectEd, you'll have this Access Manager link over here on the right-hand side of the PowerPoint that will bring you seamlessly into our Access Manager website and give you access to everything that we're about to go through. Now, once you're actually in Access Manager, you'll be given these 5 options that we'll go over here. Those options are going to be Dashboard, Alerts, Upload, Assign, and Data. Now, Alerts and Assign are both going to be covered in detail in separate webinars because there is so much information that can be gleaned from them, and I highly recommend that you attend those webinars as well, especially if assigning content has been something that your district may have historically needed some assistance with. We will go over all of our best practices for both of these things during those webinars. So now we are going to take a brief break for questions here. Let me see if we have any available at the moment, and if you've been waiting to ask them, feel free to ask away right now. Okay, and I don't see any questions in the Zoom Q&A function at the moment. So if you do have any questions during this, oh, here we go. Actually, I do see one now. So we're being asked, can there be more than one administrator that has access? And the answer is yes, absolutely. So you can have either one administrator that is, or you can have more than one administrator who has a direct login to the Access Manager website. We can set up as many as you need, though we do typically recommend that you keep that to a minimum so that at least you know who is controlling that access and you have a better leash on those things. Additionally, we do not put a limit on how many district administrators you can have within the ConnectEd platform. So you can make as many of those as you need. Any district administrator can add the district administrator role to another person's account. So there is no limit to how many people can have access to Access Manager. With that, we will jump right back on into our PowerPoint here. Again, if you do have questions, even when we're not on the questions section here, feel free to ask them and Andrea will answer them for you. All right, so let's look at some of the nuts and bolts here. The first tab that we are going to see when accessing the site is our Dashboard tab. This will just give you a basic overview of all of the data that exists within Access Manager. So you'll see the number of schools that are being imported, the number of courses and sections and users. You'll also see the number of errors that occurred during the previous import to the system. Now, an important note here is that the data that you see on this screen will not necessarily always match up to what is currently being uploaded. And the reason for that is that Access Manager retains legacy data. So if you have been sending classes for a portion of the year and then stop sending those classes on the OneRoster files, we would retain those classes in our system and they would continue to show up on this overview tab until you formally requested that we remove them. Now, the reason for that is that we don't want to remove data that may have accidentally been removed from imports or that could still be being used. When you request us to remove these things, we will run your data in what's called replace mode. And basically at that point, we will take the most recent OneRoster file that was uploaded to us and run that into our system. Any data in Access Manager that is not present on that file would then be removed from Access Manager. There are some risks to doing that, but as long as your district has been following good data practices for the school year, you should not run into these things. So basically what can happen though, for reference, is if users have had their source IDs changed throughout the school year, or if there were old courses and classes that were providing content to certain users and those courses and classes had not yet been replaced by new ones in the file, these things would either impact a person's account so that they might have trouble logging in, or they could take back content from someone until the new courses or classes were uploaded and then content was mapped to them. So 9 times out of 10 though, these are not going to be something that should impact your district. Again, as long as you have been following good data practices for the year. So we probably won't spend too long on the dashboard though. Moving on from there, we have the Alerts tab. So the Alerts tab is where you are going to see any errors that have occurred during the last import to our system. We have 3 subtabs. The first one is Data Import. And on the Data Import tab, we are going to see all of the errors that occur because of OneRoster formatting. So these are going to be things such as if a user is missing required data from the users.csv file, an error would show up here. If we are having trouble finding a school that you're importing, or one of the classes did not get generated correctly because again, perhaps it's missing data, these things would all show up on the Data Import tab. The good news is because these are from the OneRoster files, these are typically something that can be fixed on the district side by going in, editing the files, and creating a new import to us. Sometimes there are also errors that are not necessarily relevant though, such as if a user is being uploaded to us who does not have any content or classes on their account, or if the same can happen with classes that we wouldn't expect to see McGraw-Hill content on, like lunch classes. If there's a problem with those imports, such as they're missing required data, but it wouldn't impact a user's ability to get access to content, those errors don't necessarily need to be fixed. They can remain throughout the school year and they will not impact someone's ability to access McGraw-Hill content. Our second subtab that we have under alerts is the object processing errors. These occur with users or schools that have had trouble being either created or updated in our system. This is usually something that we are going to need to resolve on our side. So if you see any of these errors, don't hesitate to reach out to us here in integration support, and we will work with you to find out why those errors were happening and to get a resolution as quickly as possible. Our final subtab that we have is the ConnectEd licensing tab. If your district uses ConnectEd products, the errors that occur on this page are generated from that overnight nightly ConnectEd sync. So commonly we will see problems with users being rostered to classes or assigned content that is not necessarily still current. These are the types of errors that would show up here, and sometimes they need to be resolved by McGraw-Hill, sometimes they need to be resolved by the district. Again, if you have any questions regarding these, do not be shy, reach out to us. We'll help you diagnose what's going on and get to that resolution as fast as possible. So with our alerts tab here, as you can see, it can get quite busy with the errors that start to occur, especially at the start of the school year. we are going to have another webinar series that will go directly over the errors and how to resolve them within the alerts tab here. And for more information on it, I would definitely recommend that you check that webinar out at a future time. After our alerts tab, we have the upload tab here. This is the location that allows you to either manually upload CSV files to us or sync your district's API manually with us. Typically, most districts have automated syncs that happen every night to upload this information, but this is an additional tool that you can use if you have a new file or you've changed data within your API and need to get it immediately over to McGraw-Hill. We also have the ability here to view the upload history. On the history tab, you'll be able to see the status of your most recent uploads, when they were created, how many files were in them, where the file came from. So all of our examples here that we have in the picture are from the web upload, and that just means that they are manual files that were sent in from this upload tab. You can also see some of the individual data within those files, such as the number of lines within each file. For our API customers, you can also use this tab to turn on or off the automatic API sync. And you can also change what time that data is sent to us automatically each day or night. On the OneRoster API connection sub-tab, you'll also have the ability to go in and edit the API connection information. So if you have changed the URL, the key, or the secret, you can come to this page, update it in our system without having to even reach out to us, and that will keep that data flowing on a nightly basis. After the upload tab, we have the assign tab. So again, this is the primary function of Access Manager. It's where you take the McGraw-Hill content that your district has purchased and assign it out to at the course, class, or user level within the system. There are a lot of various ways to assign content, and we have a lot of different recommended best practices based on what you're trying to accomplish. So as such, again, we do have a separate webinar that will specifically delve into the assign tab here and cover all of those processes in detail. I would certainly recommend that you check that one out, especially with the back to school season coming up on us, just to make sure that you have everything set up the way that you'll need to seamlessly allow your users to get access to their content. The final tab in Access Manager is the Data tab. This one allows you to search through and verify the data that's being sent into McGraw-Hill Access Manager. So from here, for instance, you can view a user's list of schools or classes. You can see the content that has been assigned to the users. You can search for users by their first, last, or source ID. Now, only one user can be searched at a time though, but this is definitely useful if you need to verify that a user is both being included and successfully processed through your data, and that a user has been assigned to the correct content through their course, class, or user level. So here we have an example of what the data on this tab can look like. We have Catherine Pride. It shows which school, which course, and which class she currently belongs to. And it also shows that she has been mapped the Understanding Economics Student Learning Center subscription. So this will show up on her Connected account when she logs in, as long as that Connected sync has occurred since she was first assigned to it. Now, one note here that we do commonly get questions about is why students have 2 entries per class and content assignment. The reason for that is when you go in and map content through the Assign tab, you will be mapping both the teacher edition and the student edition to the classes and courses. Now, of course, students should not be getting access to teacher resources, and Access Manager has logic built into it to recognize that students can't get access to our teacher resources. What that results in is that first no product affiliation that you can see under Catherine Pride's name. So basically the system sees that her class or course is assigned to teacher and student edition. It gives her the student edition and it just kind of X's out that teacher edition with a no product affiliation tag instead. And the final thing that I'll say about the data tab here is that for those situations where a user needs to get access to content, but don't necessarily have a class or a course, so that's going to be our instructional coaches, principals, basically any administrator who is going to be supporting your teaching staff, but won't have a class, they can be mapped content at the user level, and the data on this page would appear with their name, their school, and the product that they have access to. The course and the class columns would be blank at that point in time. And that is nothing to worry about as long as that is how you intended to give them access to the content. All right, so that wraps up our walk through the basic overview of the Access Manager system. We're going to stop here for questions again at the end before we wrap up for the day. So let me see if we have any additional ones at this time. Okay, and I don't see any further questions coming through here. So what I will say is if you do think of any specific questions after this, or you just need further assistance with any of our systems, feel free to reach out to integration support. We are available between 7 a.m. and 8 p.m. Eastern time. You can reach us either at integrationsupport@mheducation.com or by calling us at 855-315-6417. I hope you enjoyed today's webinar and you'll check out some of our further ones on the Alerts tab and on the Assign tab. Also, once I end today's webinar, you will receive a survey about today's presentation. We'd love to hear your feedback. Thank you for joining today and I hope you have a great rest of your day.